Hello, and welcome to the Academy. My name is George Lundgren from Countryside Elementary School in Edina, Minnesota. Today we're going to be talking about Alexander Calder and creating a stabile sculpture. Our three main lesson objectives are a little bit of art history about Alexander Calder, the idea of symmetry, and the idea of amorphous shape. Alexander Calder was an American artist who lived from the late 1800s to the mid-1970s, and his main working career was from 1920 to the 1970s. He is most famous for creating the mobile as a form of art, and this is an example of a mobile right here, hanging on his shoulder. Normally this sculpture would have been hanging from the ceiling, and because these little metal parts here were balanced so well on these metal wires, when the wind blew, it would make this sculpture move around in space and actually be different every moment that it's hanging. Now, Alexander Calder didn't only make mobiles. He also made paintings, and he also made sculptures called stabiles. Here's an example of a stabile here. Notice it has no moving parts, and this is an example of a stabile that has the stable base but also has a mobile top on it. So these little pieces here would have caught the wind and been able to move around and been a kinetic sculpture as well. Now, Alexander Calder as a sculptor and as an artist used a variety of different shapes. Most of us are pretty familiar with the idea of geometric shapes that have flat edges and vertices where those flat edges come together. Alexander Calder used primarily amorphous shapes, or sometimes called organic shapes. Here I drew a little picture of a leaf because that's an organic shape. It can stay pretty consistent, but it looks different every time. Here's two other examples of amorphous shapes. I like to think of them as all having curved edges, curved sides, and not forming any rhyme or reason to them, but just always being different. You can see in this stabile here, he has used almost all amorphous shapes, whereas he has the metal piece here that he's cut out in amorphous shape, as well as the little pieces that he's cut out of the metal shapes being amorphous as well. Now, Alexander Calder sometimes used the idea of symmetry or symmetrical shapes, such as this butterfly here. This butterfly, as you see, I drew the line down the center of it, and one side, the left side, is exactly the same as the right side, and therefore they are symmetrical, or the butterfly is symmetrical. Now, if I had drawn a horizontal line, the top and the bottom, are they the same? No, they aren't. They're not symmetrical. So an object can be symmetrical one way and not the other way. But if an object is completely not symmetrical, it would be called asymmetrical. So here in his sculpture, this is an example of an asymmetrical shape. If we divide it horizontal, there's no symmetry. If we divide it vertical, there's no symmetry. If we try to figure out some other way to divide it, there is no symmetry, and that would be called an asymmetrical shape. Now, in our lesson today, we're going to be making a stabile sculpture. We're going to have two pieces. This is the first one here with the cool colors on it, and this one here with the warm colors on it. Both of them are going to be symmetrical shapes as well as amorphous shapes. So to get started, you're going to need two pieces of tag board. We're going to fold them in half so that the fold line is on one side, and we're going to be drawing an amorphous shape starting from down here at the corner and going all the way up to the top corner and then down over to the folded edge. Now once we open that up, you'll notice that right here on the fold line is going to be our line of symmetry. I do the same thing on my second shape, and then I take my scissors and I start to cut it out. Make sure that as you cut it, both sides are folded so that that fold line is truly the line of symmetry. Once I get those two done and I lay them on the table, you'll see that our line of symmetry is right along the fold that we folded our paper on. So here and here. Now that line of symmetry is important because we're going to change that into our sculpture as we go. So continuing along, you're going to need to find that line of symmetry, and you're going to take the midpoint on that line of symmetry and you're going to make two slots. On the shorter piece, you're going to make a slot on the line of symmetry from the top down, and on the taller one, you're going to go from the bottom up. So here I'm taking my scissors and cutting from the top down along my line of symmetry. And on this one, I'm going to cut from the bottom up to the center there on my line of symmetry. Now, since I put both of those slots on the line of symmetry, once I I'm done, I can slide those two together, and this will create the stabile shape like that. And that will be how we make our stabile sculpture base in class. So thank you for joining me, learning about Alexander Calder, the idea of symmetry, and the idea of amorphous shape.